Hi there. I created another one of these tops. This time it looks like this. I added a bit of flair on this one with an extra layer of beaded bows. If you'd like to see how I created that using this pattern again out of this material, this sheer silk with stripes, this jacquard silk, a heavy silk, I love this, and this black cotton. Why don't you come along and I'll show you how I did it. Thanks. First, I'm going to cut out the side panels. These are both going to be in black, and I use soup cans to do my cutting. This part is very easy to do. This fabric is really easy to work with. This is the silk, which frays a lot, so it's a little harder. I'm not going to cut out the pattern exactly, but this will be for the front and back panel. And finally, I need to decide what to do with the layer of silk, this sheer layer. So I am going to cut it into strips of about 3 inches. And right now I'm making sure that it's going to be even, so I'm evening out the side seam there. And then I'm measuring. I have to decide how long I want my strips. And now I'm gonna cut them. I believe I ended up cutting 8 of these long strips to use. And once I'm done cutting these, I will go ahead and sew them together and then turn them inside out. So after you sew them together, you want to trim off the excess seam allowance so that when you flip them inside out, there won't be a lot of bulk here. These are meant eventually to be the bows in the shirt, so I'm using a safety pin to turn them inside. The next step is to iron them. You want to make sure that the seam is in the middle, not on the side like you would usually do. The seam needs to end up in the back. The footage is black and white because my film was overexposed, so I had to go this way. But yeah, just iron them all flat and keep going until you're done. I think I had about 12 feet of this. The way I got this is I measured the front panel to determine how many inches I would need and then extrapolated out of that. Next, you are ready to take your strips to your front panel, and all you do is you pin them on row after row after row, and don't worry about clipping them exactly, especially with this fabric. Since it frays a lot, I wanted to leave a bit off the end. So just keep going, putting the strips on next to each other, row after row. They should touch, but they should not overlap. You can't see from this footage, but I am putting that seam that I ironed center back to the back panel so that the edges are nice and smooth. About here, I realized I didn't make enough strips, so I had to go back and make some more. Apparently my measuring techniques suck. After you're done pinning all of the strips in a row, you take it over to your machine and sew down the side hems, side seams on one side and the other. Just follow along your seam allowance. Don't worry about cutting off those strips yet. I saved that for the last part of my project. The lighting isn't very good here, but now I'm sewing the other side seam And once I sew these two down, I will go back and show you how it looks. The shiny fabric and my lighting isn't very good, but here I am taking some string, and I use string instead of chalk in this case so I don't mark up my silk metallic fabric. The plan is to make 2 vertical stitch lines. Where these strings are, I will be taking this back to the sewing machine to sew directly down those strings using them as guides, and then I will have 3 panels, three rows of bows in each panel. So after I finish marking them and measuring them, I think I had 3 inches in the middle and roughly 3 inches at the side at the top, but the garment does get narrower as it proceeds. So those, my dog is barking, so those side panels are going to get narrower and narrower. This is a close-up of the presser foot and my needle. You can see it to the left, and I just use that string. You can see it goes right down the middle of my presser foot, and I keep sewing. This actually worked really well, although it might not look like it. It's hard to film. Here is the end result. You can see the 2 vertical lines that I sewed all the way down and the grid of strips that I will now turn into my bows with beads on top. So this did not take long at all. I think it's the easiest method for doing something like this, or there might be other techniques that I still need to investigate. Here's the back. You can see how pretty straight my lines are. I'm really happy with this technique. Next, I have to sew the bows. To do this, I do 2 stitches in the middle, all the way up and down, just through the silk layer. Then I start from the top and gather 2 rows up, 2 rows down, 2 rows up, and 2 rows down to end with a nice bow, a gathered bow pattern. I pull that all tight. I sew through again several more times. Once that way, I loop around the back to make it tight, and then I take the bead and string it right on the, wait, I don't have the bead yet. Where's the bead? So I think I'm tightening it some more. And basically I take the bead, which should be coming any minute, and thread it onto my needle. There it is. And I try to go left to right or right to left. It was a little hard to center these, but you can mush beads around pretty easily, so it worked out. And here is just some more examples: in and out, up and down, round and round, and then you put your bead in. So that's the basic system. I think I had about 60 of these to do, so it did take some time. Here is another example. I had it easy because I'm using the stripes to make the pattern similar enough. I go in and out in the middle. I did measure roughly to get the center, and then I counted how many stripes I had across. I think I did 2 over, 2 under, so it does make a nice little bow there. I've finished this step of the project. It took me probably 4 hours to do the whole thing. I'd like to flip it over and point out some of the things I noticed. One thing I didn't consider is that when I was tightening up those gathers, this area here buckled a bit, so it's not as flat as I wanted it to be. But something that worked out nicely are these the lines. So the lines I made with the string are actually straight, so I was very happy about that. The next step in the project is I have to cut off these. I'm ready to do that. All right, now that this is done, I should look a little neater from the front. That looks good. So the next step, I'm actually ready to sew the whole garment together. This one is pretty easy. All I have to do is remember which are the front and the back, because unfortunately I serged over my my notches. So I'll have to dig out the pattern pieces to determine which are the front and back panels. But the idea is that I will go ahead and sew all of these on now. The right sides together, and then I'll sew through all of this fabric right here. And then, gosh, I'm not sure if, gosh, I don't want to reserge the whole thing. I'm worried about fraying there, but it might be okay. What I might do is put a bias banding on the top there, but that's the idea. So I'm gonna go ahead and serge, sew together these panels on the front and also the back. Something else I just realized that I didn't consider when I was putting this together was seam allowance. When I was putting on these beaded bows, I didn't consider any kind of seam allowance that would be taking off a bit of them. So I worked so hard in centering these, and now I don't think, no, I know they're not going to be centered, so I have to just deal with that. There's surely nothing I can do at this point now. So while sewing it together, I caught some of the black fabric, like I shouldn't have. This should not be there, so I have to unpick my seams. Pick, 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 pick. Well, no one is more shocked that this actually works than I am, so ignore the threads. I sewed everything together on this side. It actually looks kind of cool. I did expect that what I thought was going to happen over on this side looks a little weird, how these are cut off, because I had to do more seam allowance than I thought, but I think it still looks okay. So the next step I have is to match the shoulder seams. Let me get back out here. So I'm going ahead and I did the back half as well. I'll pin these together. What is so easy about this top is that there are no sleeves. So literally all you have to do is pin it together, and then you have your dolman sleeve. So I thought you could join me for a little bit of bias tape fun. I've sewn the bias tape on the right side, and now I'm just flipping it over and pinning it in. It's much easier than messing around with the facing. Also, you don't have to deal with the facing flipping out. I don't have to do this part because I already had extra fabric there and just folded it over. One day I'll learn how to understitch. I think I'm supposed to do that right now, but I don't quite understand understitching, so it seems to be working fine the way it is, with a little bit rolled over so that you don't see the black from the other side. Well, honestly, even if you do, it's kind of a neat look too.
Later that day, after tea...
Oh, hey! You caught me doing dishes in my new shirt. Let me go ahead and tell you what I thought about it, but if you don't mind, I have to continue with this job because I have to get it done. So, the front of the shirt turned out really well. I really like the way these buttons and the bows turned out. I think it adds a little sparkle flavor, but it still keeps the shirt really casual. I also like the way the back turned out. It's different enough where it adds a bit of contrast when you turn around, so it's kind of exciting. I don't know. And it was a quick and easy sew. Most of the time spent was doing the front panels. I think this actually took me a couple of hours, but I think it was well worth it. Okay, like maybe 4 hours. It was kind of long, and I did it over a couple of days, but still worth it in my opinion. I was worried that this pattern wouldn't fit because I had to take in the seam allowance. I made that little mistake, but I actually like the way this one fits better than the other one I made. I feel like it has a little bit of a, not tighter fit, but more, what's the right word?
Comfortable.
Comforting. Anyway, the other shirt I think was a little bit too loose on me. So let me finish my job, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned because I'll be making that burlap sack dress next. Thanks.